Hey, it's Will Saletan from the Bulwark. Unfortunately, I'm here to tell you about the latest sign that if you are a citizen or resident of the United States, you are living in an authoritarian country. So what happens in authoritarian countries? Well, one thing that happens is when there is information that the government doesn't like, they suppress it or they fire the people who reported it. And that just happened. So on Friday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported what they call a downward revision in the job numbers, meaning that they thought there were more jobs being created than actually turned out to be the case. And when they looked more carefully at the numbers, they ratcheted them down. When this happened, Donald Trump went ballistic. Now, first thing he did was he went on Truth Social and he posted this. Okay, so what he says here is the jobs numbers are being produced by a Biden appointee, Dr. Erica McIntyre, the Commissioner of Labor Statistics, who he says she faked the jobs numbers before the election to try and boost Kamala Harris's chances of victory. He's talking about what happened in 2024, last year when Kamala Harris was running for president. He says the Bureau faked the job numbers to help Kamala. And Trump says, I have directed my team to fire this Biden political appointee immediately. And notice he says she manipulated for political purposes. The commissioner manipulated the data. And he followed it up with this post, also on Truth Social. Today's jobs numbers, now he's talking not about 2024, the ones that just came out, were rigged. Rigged, remember that word that he uses for the 2020 election? He always says numbers were rigged against him. He says these job numbers also were rigged against him to make the Republicans and me look bad. Just like when they had 3 great days around the 2024 presidential election. Again, he's talking about what happened with Harris. And then those numbers were, quote, taken away on November 15th, 2024, right after the election, when the job numbers were massively revised. Okay, and you can see there that he cites exactly how many jobs were revised down in that 2024 episode, 818,000. Remember that number. So that was Trump's story. Just before the election, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, reported that the job numbers were good to help Kamala Harris. And then on November 15th, 2024, he says they revised the numbers downward. So the first question is that true? Did they go up before the election and then down after? So here is what actually happened before the 2024 election. Here is the press release that was issued last year by BLS announcing that downward revision. You'll notice that this is the revision Trump was talking about. In his Truth Social post, he said the revision was 818,000 jobs, and there it is in the release, 818,000. So when did this happen? Check out the date on the press release. It's not November 15th, as Trump says it was. It was August 21st, 2024. That is 2.5 months before the election. In fact, do you know what was happening on August 21st? The Democratic National Convention. That's what was happening. And guess what was happening on August 22nd, the next day? This.
Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
That's right. This was literally the day before Kamala Harris was about to give the most important speech of her campaign. And the BLS put out this revision, taking away 818,000 jobs at the worst possible time for her. And therefore, it was an absolute gift to the guy she was running against, which was Donald Trump. So what did Donald Trump say about that revision when it happened? Here's what he said later that day, August 21st, 2024, at a rally in North Carolina.
The Harris-Biden administration has been caught fraudulently manipulating job statistics to hide the true extent of the economic ruin that they've inflicted on America. The new data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that the administration padded the numbers with an extra, listen to this one, 818,000 jobs that don't exist.
So that was Trump's take on the revision in 2024. He said Harris and Biden had manipulated the job numbers, but the manipulation wasn't in the new numbers. It wasn't in the revision. It was in the old numbers. Trump said the new lower numbers from the BLS were the truth. And they showed that the previous higher numbers were wrong. So this week, when BLS did the same thing and revised down the job numbers, Trump flipped. I mean, he didn't just flip like he flipped out. He flipped his take. He said the old numbers were real and the new numbers were fake. So Trump doesn't have a principled objection to revising the job numbers. His only rule is the revised numbers are real when they're about Democrats, and they're fake when they're about him. So when you look at the actual press release from the BLS in August 2024, and when you watch what Trump said about it, it's very clear that the story he told in those Truth Social posts on Friday was bogus. The revisions didn't happen after the election on November 15th. They happened 3 months before the election. So you might figure that Trump stopped telling that story about November 15th, right? Not hardly. Okay, here's what Trump told reporters at the White House after he had posted that he was firing the BLS commissioner.
Days before the election, she came out with these beautiful numbers for Kamala, I guess Biden/Kamala, and she came out with these beautiful numbers trying to get somebody else elected. Then right after the election, I think on the 15th, November 15th, she had an $800,000 or $900,000 massive reduction.
Same story, same lie. Okay, so we know Trump is a liar. We also know Trump is an authoritarian. But the thing about authoritarians is they need people around them to parrot their lies. They need an army of people, bureaucrats, who will do whatever they say and will justify whatever the authoritarian does. And in an authoritarian regime, these people are often known as apparatchiks. The apparatchik is someone who, whatever the boss says, I will come out and defend it, justify it, rationalize it, excuse it. So Trump has many of these people, and I'm going to show you one of them. This is Kevin Hassett, the director of the White House National Economic Council. So since Trump fired the BLS commissioner, Hassett, who is up, he's being considered to be chairman of the Federal Reserve. Like if Trump fires Jerome Powell, Kevin Hassett is one of the first people are talking about as potentially replacing Powell. So Hassett has given 3 TV interviews since the firing, defending the firing and defending Trump's false allegation that the numbers were fishy. Now, I'm going to show you 2 of these interviews. Here's what Kristen Welker asked Hassett today on Meet the Press.
Does the administration have any evidence that it was rigged, as the president said? And will you be presenting that to the American public?
And here's how Hassett answered that question.
The revisions are hard evidence. There, for example, there was a 818,000 revision making the Joe Biden job record a lot worse that came out after he withdrew from the presidential campaign. There have been a bunch of patterns that could make people wonder.
Did you catch that? Hassett knows that the downward revision in 2024 happened before the election. So he knows that Trump's story is bull. But instead of acknowledging that, Hassett says the revision was after Joe Biden dropped out. That is unbelievably dishonest because Hassett knows that the timing of the announcement on the day before Kamala Harris's convention speech absolutely screwed her. But Hassett pretends that the timing was favorable to the Democrats because it was a month after Joe Biden dropped out, which is totally irrelevant. And here's Hassett giving a similar answer on Fox News Sunday. The host, Shannon Bream, asked him to respond to this statement from Trump about the new job numbers.
I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election.
And here's what Hassett said in response.
Look, the fact is that when the data are unreliable, when they keep being revised all over the place, then there are going to be people that wonder if there's a partisan pattern in the data. And so if you look back to just a year ago, for example, there was another massive revision from the BLS, almost a million jobs down, that said that the Joe Biden jobs record was a lot worse than people thought. But we didn't get the downward revision until after Joe Biden had dropped out.
That is the same sleazy answer that Hassett gave on Meet the Press. And then he has the gall to claim that because the revision happened after Biden dropped out, which again is irrelevant, it showed a, quote, partisan pattern. And then Hassett added this.
They have this little black box that moves the numbers around and makes people wonder, sometimes with partisan patterns. And so I think what we need is a fresh set of eyes at the BLS.
Hassett is sending a signal to Donald Trump that he will defend anything Donald Trump does, including firing a public servant for giving you, the American public, correct information about the economy. So it's one thing to make sure that Donald Trump's powers are limited and to make sure that we never again elect an authoritarian president. But it's also important that we make sure that apparatchiks, like Kevin Hassett, never work in government again. See you next time.